evening, depending on where you're joining us from today. I'm Kyler Cheatham, and it is my distinct pleasure to moderate Tech Titans, the Transformation Ground Control Showdown, when it comes to our game show here. So I have some of my esteemed colleagues joining me today. And of course, as always, we have our live audience joining as well, which we will hope will engage in some of our questions too. So the kind of a fun way to learn a lot about different areas of digital transformation, implementation, software selection, while having a good time while doing it. So with that, I am going to ask my esteemed guests to introduce themselves. And if you could, while they're introducing themselves, just for logistics, pop where you're joining us from. We have a global audience. We always love to know kind of who we're talking to and where you're joining us from today. So go ahead and pop that in the comments. But with that, I will start with our fearless leader, Eric Kimberling.
Well, hi. Thank you, Kyler. And thank you to everyone joining today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting, and I am based in Denver, Colorado in the USA, which is where I am here today.
Excellent. Well, what about you, Greg Benton, our Chief Strategy Officer?
Well, you just said it, Kyler.
I know.
Greg Benton, Chief Strategy Officer for Third Stage. And I, too, am located here in Denver in the USA. And it's an incredible day today here in Denver. So beautiful. Glad to be with you.
Excellent. And Ryan, your premiere debut as part of the Third Stage team on our live stream. So if you want to, you can go ahead and let us know who you are and what you're about.
Yeah, my name is Ryan Glisson. I am the Global Marketing Manager, and Kyler and I work together to help get out the message and the brand of Third Stage through marketing.
Excellent. And Jordy?
Hi, my name is Jordy McDougall. I'm a consultant at Third Stage Consulting. I'm based out of Denver, Colorado, but right now I am based out of my car. I'm actually traveling from... I'm in somewhere in Nebraska right now, so nice to be on.
Excellent. And yeah, Jordy is back-to-back episodes, so he's slowly becoming the Eric Kimberling Jr., as I like to call him, of ground control here. So let's start with some fun questions. As many of our audience knows, we have a classic rock theme here from Boston and Third Stage, their album. So I'm going to do a little this or that when it comes to classic rock. So I can see all of your comments no matter where you're joining from today. So if you have an opinion or a question, you can go ahead and pop them in the comments here. So to start, we'll go to Eric. This or that, the Beatles or the Rolling Stones?
Ooh. Last time you did this, it was the Beatles or Elvis, so now this is a little bit tougher for me.
I know. I had to, make it not as a slam dunk as it was the last time. So.
That is really difficult for me. I'm going to do an it depends. It depends. If
you're on the first question, you're going to do an it depends. Okay, all right.
Depends on if you like flawless songwriting and production and influence on rock and roll overall, I'd say the Beatles. If you just like the loose garage rock fun feel of the Rolling Stones, then the Rolling Stones. Personally, I'd probably go Rolling Stones. If I had to choose who I'm going to listen to, it's going to be Rolling Stones over the Beatles. But I feel like that's blasphemy in some ways, especially for maybe some of our UK audience. They may not appreciate me. Well, actually, they're both from the UK, so it doesn't matter, I guess. Rolling Stones and the Beatles. But I'd say a slight edge to the Rolling Stones for that reason.
Excellent. Well, very good. Well, Ryan, our residential rock star, your turn next. So this or that, Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd?
That's a super easy one for me. Led Zeppelin all day long, every day. I, didn't necessarily grow up on classic rock. And it's not something I listen to super, super frequently, but I will to this day still say that Led Zeppelin's the best band ever. Like they had like a 3 or 4 album stretch that was just like 10 out of 10 from start to finish. And, you listen to, back in the 70s, their late 60s, 70s, early 80s, there wasn't auto-tune and there wasn't the digital editing in like the recording process like there is today. And they sound as good as anyone ever. And so that's just like super impressive to me on top of just great songs. So yeah, that's an easy one for me personally.
All right, Led Zeppelin it is. So, all right, Greg, Queen or AC/DC?
Wow, that's even a tough one. Queen was just iconic,
Yeah.
especially after the movie came out. I have to say I appreciate Queen
Me
much
too.
more than I did before. But AC/DC, I've been to a few concerts with AC/DC, and they're just incredible. The stage presence is off the charts, right? So I'm not going to play Eric's "It Depends" card. I am going to go with Queen as
Queen.
as my favorite all time out of those two.
Wow, good. All right, Jordy, I feel bad like even asking you these because I don't even know if you were like alive during this era,
Wow.
but
Tough crowd.
Aerosmith or Guns N' Roses?
I would have to go with Guns N' Roses, but I'll throw in a little shout out to Aerosmith. Actually, they have a ride, whether it's at Disneyland or Disney World, was probably the best ride that I rode at that amusement park. So that makes me want to say Aerosmith just because of the experience of being at Disney World, I think it was in Florida. But Guns N' Roses. I mean,
Yeah.
they just have so many hits that you hear whether you go to a sporting event or any sort of outing, you're going to hear many Guns N' Roses songs. So that'll be my pick.
Good. Well,
Welcome to the jungle.
yeah, there
Yeah,
you go.
exactly.
Well, definitely, and we'd love to hear from the audience too, kind of what your favorite classic rock band and where you're joining from today. But let's get into more of the digital transformation. So the goal of these lighthearted conversations are kind of to showcase different approaches and to understand kind of the positive and negatives behind them. So I'm going to do a couple would you rather questions. As I mentioned in our instructions, you guys are allowed to pass. I'm sure we will hear it depends, even if I put some governance around, you're not allowed to say that. But Greg, I'm actually going to start with you. I mean, your experience in the industry is truly invaluable to our audience. So I think you can kind of kick us off, if you will. So would you rather invest in your company's existing legacy system or implement a completely new digital infrastructure?
Well, I'm not going to play the depends card, but I think it really is a matter of doing the upfront homework, understanding exactly what the objectives are of the organization, and preparing for making that decision about which direction you're going to go. In some cases, from a budgetary standpoint, from a business continuity standpoint, making the best of your legacy systems may be the right choice for your organization. On the other hand, moving to a new cloud technology, moving to a single unified system for reporting, for analytics, for everything else that you need to do over the next 5 to 10 years
Mhm.
is often the best choice. So I think it depends on budget, it depends on your objectives as an organization, and it depends on your willingness to embark on this kind of a journey and really involve the whole organization in moving forward.
Absolutely, definitely. An important alignment is really the key
Yeah.
piece of that, as you mentioned. So definitely 5 points to Greg. I'm just going to give points out.
Five.
Like, yeah,
Wow.
5 points to Greg.
Although, did you notice he said it depends 3 times in that
I
one?
know. You can't. You got to meet people where they are. It's called, compromise. At least he doesn't like blatantly cheat like you do. Eric can just say,
That's
"I'm
true.
going to say it's."
That's true. He at least took a stab at answering
I
it
know.
without the argument.
Right. All right, well, let's go to you, Jordy. This is kind of along the same lines. Would you rather prioritize investing in a cutting edge emerging technology such as AI, predictive analytics, machine learning, or focus on optimizing your current technology stack?
And I can't say it depends. Okay. All right.
We always know it depends, but you maybe can give us the pros and cons of both.
Right. Well, I would say that you would have to really figure out what you want in the future and what you're trying to work towards, whether it is really extreme growth and trying to scale very fast, or if you're kind of just trying to stay where you're at and just maybe continue being in your place in the marketplace. So depends. I would say half and half. If that's an answer, I would say that AI is somewhat or another going to make its way into almost everything out there, but you'll still have to work on your people and really lean on your people as humans and teammates and individuals, while also working with your current technology and trying to leverage that as high as you possibly can. So a little bit of both, and maybe it might take some trial and error and seeing, if you go a bunch of AI, maybe you want to roll back a little bit and vice versa. So if that's a fair answer.
I'll accept it. I'll
Okay,
accept it.
thanks.
Yeah, no, great answer, because really it does depend on the overall infrastructure and proficiencies of the organization. Emerging
Right.
technologies can be really sparkly and sound really cool, but if you don't have the operational proficiencies to make sure that you're leveraging their abilities and their capabilities, then it's a bad investment. So it definitely makes sense, for sure. Okay. To Ryan, would you rather train your existing employees to develop digital skills or hire new specialized digital experience for your specific system or project?
Well, I'm just going to go based off my personal experience of trying to learn everything and then therefore watering things down. So in my experiences, at least with doing marketing things, it's been a quicker avenue to success to bring in people that like are experts at one thing than try to get. I consider myself somewhat of like a generalist with things. So like I'm pretty decent at a lot of things, but I don't know that I'm an expert at any one. And I feel like, being a generalist is great to get you maybe from 0 to 60 to 80%, but to really like fully maximize and scale something, like you do kind of need the efficiencies of someone that's an expert to get you that last maybe 20 to 25%. So I guess to Jordy's point, I'm saying like, it's not really, it depends or 50-50, but it's like, I feel like optimizing what you have can get you pretty far, but it's not going to get you all the way. So I guess dang it, I almost said it depends. Depending on,
Way to say it depends in a different order. That's a good job.
This would make a great drinking game.
Yeah. If your company is starting out, I would say maybe you can optimize the people that you have, maybe for budgetary reasons. But if you're at a pretty efficient and bigger company, like maybe it takes bringing in some of those people that have like the skills that just are kind of beyond what your team is going to be able to like realistically learn. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it depends. I'm the only one that's allowed to say it depends, just so everyone's clear. Yeah, certainly of, what are the competencies in-house, but also investing in that upskilling, especially when it comes to new technology and that messaging around what that looks like throughout the transformation. So you're not creating pockets of resistance or fear, definitely. So, okay, Eric, you're up. Would you rather implement a comprehensive digital transformation strategy across all departments simultaneously, or take a phased approach, starting with one department at a time?
I would say say it. I know you want me to, or you don't want me to, but I'm not going to say those two words. I would say that probably a more incremental phased approach,
Yeah.
generally speaking, is going to be, most organizations just don't have the risk tolerance, or they don't move fast enough to justify a big bang kind of a enterprise-wide deployment all at once. So I think having it more of a phased approach and incrementally, if I had to choose one, even though it doesn't apply to everyone, I'd say that incremental approach is the more commonly palatable one.
Gotcha. Definitely. Well, again, would love to hear from the audience too. Phased approach versus kind of a holistic approach, we'll say, to a digital transformation. That's certainly something that we work with our clients to help them identify their specific goals, because it will be unique, if you will, to each organization. So this one, I'm going to do, I don't know, this is a controversial one. I'm going to do Greg, and then maybe Eric will argue with him. That's where I see this going if I were to guess.
Good.
So would you rather adopt a cloud-based approach for storing and managing your data, or selecting a SaaS system, or focus on an on-premise data center solution?
Oh, that one's really easy for me. I would say a cloud-based approach. There are a couple of things going on with cloud right now. Over the last 5 years, and really arguably over the last decade, all of the software vendors have been moving to a cloud-based platform for at least part of, if not all of their application suites.
Mhm.
And so if you're going to be relevant and you're going to be improving performance over the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to want to be on something that's continually upgraded, that's continually optimized through that cloud capability. And on-premise, I believe, is going to go away at some point. The computing power, the storage capabilities that are inherent in the cloud, the cloud-to-cloud connectivity and the interoperability is, I just think, overwhelming in
Yeah.
terms of staying on-premise for people. And Eric, I don't know if you might disagree or agree with that.
Well, if he forced me to disagree or play devil's advocate, which it sounds like Kyler might be
Yeah.
forcing me,
No.
then I would say, well, that all sounds great, Greg. You may be right, but what about the areas of competitive advantage? I have a company that has some super unique processes that just can't be handled by a multi-tenant SaaS cloud solution, and I need that flexibility to be able to preserve my secret sauce, and nor do I want that ever to be in the cloud. Or maybe I've got I'm a government contractor and I can't have my data in the cloud. I can't have it hosted in a different country or whatever. So what do you say to situations like that? Does that change your answer, or do you have a way that cloud could maybe address some of those challenges?
It slightly alters my answer because you have to plan from the very beginning how you're going to sequence your move to the cloud. So if you're moving your core ERP system to a cloud-based system, and you've got that special sauce that needs to be on premise, or you've got huge data stores that are in an older on-premise custom developed system, you've got to have that interoperate with the cloud-based system that you're moving to. And eventually, you may move everything to the cloud. So I think it is a matter of transition and sequencing the consolidation of older applications into a cloud-based digital enterprise operations package, right? That entire vision.
Absolutely. That vision is certainly critical. And turning to our audience, we have some great questions coming in and some great answers. We do have a global audience joining us today, so thank you so much for all of your engagement. So building on kind of that phased versus big bang approach, we have a question from the audience that's specifically for Eric. Don't you think the implementation strategy, big bang or not, depends on the risks the business are facing in its market, new entrants, so on? So talk a little, Eric, if you don't mind, talking a little bit about just the overall considerations when it comes to a holistic versus phased approach.
Yeah, first of all, when that question came up, I couldn't help but notice Italo's name. That's a cool name. Italo Flamio. That's a very cool name. So I'm curious to know where you're from, Italo, and what the origin of that name is, because it's a very cool name. Anyway, that was not at all your question, but the question is about implementation strategy. I think it does depend on the risk. I think a lot of times, I mentioned risk tolerance and how if an organization has a low tolerance for risk, they might be more inclined to go with a phased approach or an incremental approach to their transformation. But it could also be that it's a Lowe's point. It could be that you're risk tolerant, but you need to be more, or you don't have a high tolerance for risk, but maybe you should, because the market's changing so fast and the world around you is changing so fast and you're not keeping up as an organization. So that's a great counterpoint to what I had said earlier, which is you might have a low tolerance for risk, but you might need to focus your cultural transformation on accepting more risk and being more aggressive in change and that sort of thing. So that'd be a sort of a good counterpoint, I'd say, to that, to address Italo's point. But it's a great point, and I agree with him.
Yeah, and Italo's from Brazil, so thank you for joining us today. And then Thurman on LinkedIn also said, Eric is right, most customers can't handle the big bang, which you had mentioned. The phased approach might be a better option for organizations that aren't prepared to really undertake a full transformation. But to Greg's point, making sure that the business is still aligned with the overall objectives. So definitely some great feedback and conversations happening in the comments. So thank you for that engagement. Kind of back to would you rather question. I'm going to go to Jordy on this one. Would you rather prioritize cybersecurity measures, which are important for those SaaS-based environments, to protect your digital assets, or invest in enhancing data analytic capabilities internally?
I guess depending on where you're at right now in your business and what you're looking to go for, it's the same kind of thing. What your goal is for the future. I would say that the cyber security would be a big thing to polish up before you're trying to move forward and start to advance forward. So it's almost like one of those, get your ducks all in a row before you start, moving forward. So I would focus on the security aspect of things and then move forward into enhancing as a whole.
Absolutely. And cybersecurity has really gone from kind of a nice to have, like it's probably going to be okay, to a full-fledged work stream. Is that kind of correct?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Excellent. All right, Ryan, you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. We are going to go back to our this or that format. So you have two choices, and I will ask you kind of which one you choose and why. So in-house development versus outsourcing. So when it comes to digital transformation, would you prefer to develop new technologies or solutions in-house or outsource to external vendors?
I mean, I feel like this kind of falls in line with the question a little bit that I had earlier.
You can say it depends if you need to. I can't like hold you to it.
And you said it. This was this software in-house?
So technical skills in-house. So that can be maintenance in-house. That can be outsourcing IT sources. That can be consultants to kind of help with your transformation. A variety of different things.
Gotcha. Okay, then yeah, it pretty closely I feel like falls in line for me with what my previous response was. Like, if you have the budget and the time to be able to hire out for those things and have, or I should say, if you have the budget and time to develop in-house, then that's great. And if you have the resources to be able to, hire the team members to manage all that, then that's great. But that can be a slow turnaround. It can be costly. It can require a lot of man hours or employee hours to kind of facilitate all those things. So if you're a bigger company and you need some customization and you need things really like honed in for each part of the business or the campaigns or strategies you're trying to do, like that could be great. If you need to be a little bit more nimble and you maybe you don't have the resources to do some of those things, then hiring out, at least like, and again, I'm speaking as someone that's mostly done marketing, so I'm thinking from a marketing perspective here, but like hiring out those people that can help with some efficiencies and maybe like don't cost as much as hiring a full team to manage something. That's how I see it from like how I've seen things work in companies in the marketing.
If I might add just a comment to that, I completely agree with you, Ryan. But I think that what we're seeing a lot of right now is kind of a hybrid approach. And you want the people that have been working in the organization, that know your organization from both a business and an IT standpoint, working on the project, right? And you also want the best people who are certified in any given technology to be working on your implementation, for example. So putting those two side by side in a core project team is a way of transferring that knowledge internally, but also making sure that you keep your resident knowledge, your tribal knowledge of the organization intact as you go forward. And then when you're done with the implementation, the ongoing optimization is performed by your internal people. And that really just is a good grounds or foundation for change in the organization as well, getting everybody organized together and moving forward in the same direction.
Yeah, and that organizational design piece of it is so important to understand what that hybrid looks like, who should be in what seats, what partners should be involved in that. So a lot of things like we do for third stage is help our clients actually develop that competency of whether it's in-house or externally because of our independent and technology agnostic stance. Our only goal is for business and making sure our clients achieve those business objectives. So that's always nice to have that experience to kind of craft that because it can be hard. It can be very complex to make sure you have all the right people in the right places. All right, we're going to go to you for this one, Eric. It's the times old this or that. Agile or waterfall?
If I had to pick one, I'd go waterfall, especially for larger, complex, multinational organizations that are trying to standardize operations, act like one company, and drive efficiency gains, which a lot of our clients are. I know it's not cool. The cool answer is to say definitely agile. Agile's the thing. That's the way to go. But I've just seen too many dark sides of agile and too much chaos that it creates. However, having said that, there's ways that you can sort of do that hybrid approach where you can have a waterfall stage gate based approach, but within that framework, in that structure, you can have sort of agile-esque sorts of ways of deploying once you get to it. So for example, you could have a waterfall based approach to define all your requirements and sort of your future state business processes and organization up front, and then take more of an agile approach once you get past that initial stage gate to then go deploy technology and test it, react, change, pivot, all that stuff. So I think you could do agile, but doing so in the context of a broader overarching waterfall approach is probably the way I would say you could get the best of both worlds. But if I had to pick one or the other, it's one extreme or the other, which is not necessarily the real choice that most organizations face. But if I had to choose, I'd say waterfall, because I think even though there is a downside to waterfall, I think the upside potential is greater with waterfall, especially for larger multinationals that are trying to standardize and drive efficiency gains and all that good stuff.
Interesting. I'm definitely interested to hear from the audience. This usually sparks a lot of conversation on the different approaches because you have some purists in both camps as well. But it sounds like sometimes waterfall is more the structure and agile can be more of a mindset. Being the ability to be flexible and pivot is something that's definitely critical when it comes to a digital transformation project.
Yeah, and you have to be careful too that you're not using agile as an excuse not to have structure in your project, because a lot of times I think that's what teams do. They say, well, let's not worry about planning. Let's not worry about a ton of business requirements up front. Let's just go start building stuff and deploying stuff. And the vendors sort of pile onto that mindset too, because they want you to just get going. They want you to start deploying stuff right away. So they're going to, I think that's why the vendors lean so heavily into agile, is because it supports their agenda, which is to sell more software, get it deployed as quickly as possible. But as an organization, sometimes you need to pump the brakes and say, well, yeah, I want to deploy quickly and aggressively, but I also want to be deliberate about what I'm doing. I want to be structured. I want to be methodical. I want to get value out of this. I don't want to just go throw technology at the problem and assume that agile approach is going to fix it. So yeah, I'd say, the more structured the more you're trying to be structured, the more controls you're trying to put in place, the more standardization and efficiency gains you're trying to do, the more you would probably lean towards waterfall. If you're a tech startup, you're really nimble, you have a high tolerance for risk, and you just move fast as an organization, then maybe leaning more towards agile does make sense in those cases. But what we find with most organizations out there, they're not tech companies, they're not startups, they're not necessarily in that position.
Yeah, and we even have a question from the audience specifically about a public sector environment. So what about a government agency? And it sounds like that's definitely a high standardized environment, correct?
Yeah, I'd say government agencies, you would be more inclined probably to lean towards waterfall, partially because you have to. I mean, there's certain regulatory things you just have to do and that you're set out to do, you're chartered to do as an organization. So you don't have a lot of as much flexibility as a for-profit organization that can do, for all practical purposes, they can do whatever they want. Government agencies can't do whatever they want. The other thing too is government agencies are more likely to have highly tenured employees that are more likely to resist change. And when you have tenured employees that are more likely to resist change, Agile does not help. It actually makes it worse, because then you just end up paving the cow paths. You end up taking all that feedback that you get from the people that are resisting change, and you tweak the overall project to fit what they want, which oftentimes is just keep it the way things have always been. So, for that reason too, you want, and I'm these are total stereotypes and generalizations. I totally understand that, acknowledge that, but in general, that's what we see a lot with government and public sector organizations.
Excellent. Well, very good. Well, thank you for the question. That's a really good question. Keep those coming here in the comments and we'll keep answering them. So going to you, Greg, user design or functionality. So in the context of a digital transformation, would you prioritize exceptional user experience and design or functional features?
Exceptional user design. I would say that, that's getting to the business process part of it, really controlling what you're implementing and rolling out rather than just adhering to whatever the technology will bring. So adhering to your own best practices, your own business processes, and optimization of those processes, rather than just doing a technology implementation for the sake of new technology. So as Eric was alluding to the cow path statement, I think that if you don't look at the business process piece of it first, the functionality, the use of the system that you currently have and the use of the system that you have as your objectives, you really get to a point where you're just paving over old cow paths, or you're implementing very expensive new technology to do something that you really should be able to, as an organization, figure out how to optimize the way that you do business globally. So, Eric, I don't know if you might have another thought on that as we go back and forth on this.
No, actually, I agree with you on that. I think that makes a lot of sense. Unless Kyler forces me to debate you, then
I know, right? I like the drama, No. I didn't think you were going to say that. That's always why I love these, because I thought you were going to say the opposite. Then user designs of functionalities are more important. So I'm surprised to hear that answer. So definitely I learned something as well today.
I think in general, software vendors have underinvested in user interface. They've focused so much on building these behind the scenes, under the covers sorts of functionalities and capabilities, which is great, but it doesn't do you any good if the user can't figure out how to get there. So I think it'll be interesting to see how AI might change that, especially the generative and responsive AI tools that are out there. If you could not have to navigate through a bunch of menus and just ask a question to the system, and that's how you get information, or that's how you get the insight you're looking for. That's, the ultimate sort of utopia of user experience. But in general, I think a lot of software vendors have really underinvested, and the ones that have invested heavily in user interface, I think they have a leg up because, first of all, it sells really well. If you've got a great user interface, it's going to be easier to sell those capabilities. Second of all, it's going to be easier to implement and train people on it if it's got a better user interface.
Oh yeah, and change management. I mean, change management is much easier with the optimized user interface, right? Making it simple to do simple tasks, do your job in a different way, but with new tools. So
yeah, agreed.
Well, speaking of new tools, my next one is for you, Jordy. So this or that, fresh new vendor versus incumbent.
It would depend on, I guess, what technology that the fresh new vendor is trying. There I go again. Sorry.
I told you, Eric Jr. over here just,
He's been trained well.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just kidding.
The new technology, it might be harder to trust. You don't have as many references that you might be able to get in touch with and really learn from. But there's always an upside to the new and innovative vendors and new and innovation in anything, I would say. So you would really have to do your homework. I would say maybe a little bit more than the already existing vendor that is currently successful, and maybe doing a pros and cons type comparison between the two and really seeing, okay, what is the benefit of going with this new technology that I might be the first person ever using it, but if it's going to change me this much more and make me all of a sudden an industry leader, then maybe it's worth that risk. And it's going back to the risk and risk management and kind of seeing where you fit on that spectrum and what you think would be best for your growth and getting towards that future that you're striving towards.
And so, and this is to the group, what are the importance of, say, when you're going through an evaluation or your system's getting sunsetted, of actually structuring an evaluation besides just going with the incumbent within your overall organization? So I'll just throw that out there. Someone can pick it up.
I think that with the incumbent, regardless of whether the incumbent is the right solution or the best solution for your organization, the good thing with an incumbent is you've built a certain amount of critical mass internally and comfort and knowledge of that technology. And so it's sort of, it forces a situation where you have to raise the bar. You have to have a pretty high threshold to justify ripping out the incumbent and replacing it with something totally different. It could be that there's something better out there for you, but you have to really assess it against the ROI of that. Is it worth the risk, the potential extra cost that's going to take to now retrain your staff on an entirely new technology? Is that worth the potential upside? If you're only going to get like 5 to 10% incremental value over your incumbent, then it's probably not worth it. But if you've got this incumbent that has some earth-shattering capabilities that your incumbent does not offer, it may be worth it. And it gets back to the risk tolerance, your culture, what you are today versus what you want to be in the future. If you're a private equity owned company and you're really, throwing rocket fuel on your growth trajectory, it may make more sense then to go with, kind of a newer technology that's a little bit higher risk, but potential higher ROI. If you're a third generation family owned business that's growing 5 to 10% a year, that may be too much risk, and you may be better off just getting more value out of the incumbent and, just really, really fine tuning what you've got. Sort of back to the question you had for Jordy before about do you replace I forgot what the question was, but choosing new system versus investing in the existing system.
Yep.
I think that really kind of points out why the independence and really taking a look at what are your options as a business really comes into importance, right? From a budgetary standpoint, many times staying with the incumbent avoids having to pay for both maintenance on the old software and subscription to the new software system that you're implementing. There are big financial considerations in moving to a whole new technology platform, right? But there may be huge gains available to you, just as Eric was pointing out. So you really don't want to move with a single software vendor, even though they're an incumbent, without checking out everything that's available to you. So understanding what the risks and the ROI are for your business as you go forward. Vitally important.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great segue into your question, Greg. You ready for it?
Yeah, sure.
Core ERP or best of breed?
Wow. That is a tough one. And I'm staying away from the two words. So I would actually say best of breed, because I don't think best of breed is actually best of breed anymore. I think best of breed is the awareness that you've got all of these edge solutions that surround core ERP. Core ERP used to be finance, supply chain, human resources, payroll, those type of functionalities. Now it includes things like asset management, supply chain management, warehouse management, interoperability with in healthcare, clinical systems, things like that. All of those make the digital operations picture come into focus. So it's not just core ERP. It's okay, you can call it best of breed, but it's really just best of all solutions for your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you say that, because we did similar to Eric hosted with our team probably about a year ago at this point. And we asked everyone that question, and they all said core ERP. And we've asked a few times since then, and it's changed. The answer has changed. So how do you feel as though the industry has evolved in the last, year, 5 years around that?
Eric, you want to take that, or do you want me to? I've got an answer.
I could take a stab at it and see what you think. I think the backdrop of this debate, you have to look at the economic incentives of everyone involved in the debate. So you get, if I work for SAP or Oracle or maybe even Microsoft or one of the big software vendors, I'm going to dig in my heels and believe strongly that single ERP, integrated ERP, that's the answer. That's the Kool-Aid I've been drinking for however many years I've been in the industry. If I'm in that space. Conversely, if I work for Salesforce or Workday or one of these best of breed providers, I'm probably going to dig in my heels and say it's best of breed all the way. So you kind of have to look at who's paying for the message, who's funding the message, and that's why you get such strong opinions on both sides. It's a lot like politics. It reminds me of U.S. politics and global politics in many ways. It's sort of like you're one side or the other. There's no in between, and you have to look at everyone's biases and that sort of thing. So I think that's the backdrop. I don't know that it really answers the question other than just to explain why people have such strong opinions on this debate.
Absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense. And to Greg's point, it's really about understanding your unique needs. I know one of my favorite Greg Benton quotes is, "It's not best of breed, it's best for you." So that's kind of the approach that we always take. What is best for you as an organization? So
I'm curious to hear what Greg was going to say, though. What was your response, Greg?
My response is really just that we 5 years ago were looking for a unified data system, and I think that anymore the ability to create an interoperable system, and as we were talking about it earlier, sequence in the move to the cloud or the move to a full transformation is making it so that people have to consider other systems that they have in play. On-premise, cloud-based, and a unified data structure is no longer just requisite within a single software system. You can have multiple software systems and legacy systems all interoperating together. And there are a lot of tools in the ecosystem in the marketplace to accomplish that.
Yep,
Yeah.
that interoperability certainly is critical. So cool. Well, we're going to end on a big question too. So hopefully this sparks kind of a closing conversation. But I'm going to give this one to you, Eric. This or that, change management or technology adoption. So like when implementing digital transformation, what aspect do you believe is more critical? Effective change management strategies or seamless technology adoption?
Hands down, change management. Although I'll say technology adoption is typically a subset of change management, so it's also a cop-out answer too, because I get to choose both, and you didn't even realize it. I'm choosing both by saying change management.
Blew my mind.
But I would say in general, like if you had to choose over like a broad, comprehensive change program versus really good tech adoption, even though there's overlap between the two, I'd say the broad change management is going to be more effective because it's usually not the tech adoption that's the hardest part. I mean, that is important. It is difficult to learn a new system and to understand new workflows in a system, but people will typically figure that stuff out. I don't want to say easily, but they'll figure it out eventually. Where they struggle though is it's the cultural changes, it's the organizational changes to my job, it's the why are we doing this? I don't want to do this. I don't want to change. It's that pushback, that resistance that creates problems. It's not that I can't learn. I can learn if I want to. The problem is I don't want to learn, or I don't want to accept the change. And so change management overcomes that prerequisite to tech adoption. You could have all the great tech adoption in the world, but if you haven't addressed those more fundamental issues, then the tech adoption efforts are going to fall flat.
Well said. Well said. Anybody else have a reaction to that one?
I would just agree and say that you can have the best teacher in the world, but if you're not prepared to be a student, that you're not going to be able to learn. So totally agree.
Very wise. Very wise. Well, good stuff. Well, thank you to you guys in the audience for joining us for our game show. I'm pretty sure Greg won because he's the only one that I actually gave points to. So next time we'll have to come up with
5 points. Took it.
Yeah, congratulations.
5 to 0
You
to 0.
definitely achieved the third stage of the transformation game show Showdown. So, but thank you again, in all seriousness, for providing all of these great insights. And thank you to the audience for all of your great questions. If you do, or if you're seeing this after the stream, you can leave the comments here when it comes to this or that's, any would you rather questions that you'd like me to ask our team. And Eric and I will address those on our ground control podcast that comes out every Wednesday. Just also a reminder of our thought leadership materials on our website. A lot of the things that we touched on, such as software selection, our overall digital transformation 2023 handbook, our phase 0 planning, those are all free downloads on our website. You can also see links to them in the description. But thank you again, everyone. It was so great to see you, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks all.